Hello, I am Super Orange Cat and here with Toonami's ratings from August 10th, 2019. Let's start with the top of the block. Dragon Ball Super pulls in a .33 this week. Following that up is Genlock at a .20. Then we have Fire Force at a .20. Lupin the Third Part 5 is at a .17. Food Wars is at a .16. Black Clover at a .15. Boruto at a .13. His father at a .12. Gundam Origins is at a .13 this week. My Hero Academia is at a .13 as well. And the greatest anime in human history, Jumaseto Machu Picchu, finishes everything up at a .09. In general, this was a better week than last week. Very notable thing right off the block. You have to point out the big show here in Genlock, the show that's been the most hyped, I'd say, for this. And it had a pretty, I'll say, a disappointing number last week in a .17. However, it hits kind of that mythical number of .20 this week, which is a great omen for the show. Because, like I said, it's like generally the line to be considered like a great show, I think, on Toonami in terms of ratings is .20 flat. And not only did that it build to that this week, we also have Fire Force going up even further than Genlock did to get to that .20 mark, which is good for the show. Considering this was the episode, if you remember way back, like say a few weeks ago, I posted a video noting how this episode was going to get edited. However, interestingly enough, it wasn't necessarily the fire stuff that got edited like many people thought it would in the wake of the Kyoto animation disaster. It was actually a quote unquote fan service scene that got heavily edited. That's an interesting thing to note, especially considering that 1 hour later you have Food Wars, which is basically fan service the show. I might make another video on that because that's actually a whole interesting thing revolving Fire Force and Toonami's current S&P issues. But yeah, really, and also one thing to note, Lupin the Third, who I've said for a while, as much as I love the show, it needs to be pushed later in the block. It's not getting the good ratings, and just as I say that, this week it puts up a pretty solid number. It does not get built on. Food Wars, which I've been praising to the high heavens the last few weeks, actually lost 1/100th from Lupin the Third at a .16, albeit it is steady with last week's number, so not entirely the worst thing in the world for Food Wars. And then you have Black Clover. Black Clover, which had made a habit this past year or so of building on the show in front of it, also fails to build at a .15. And then Boruto, which had started to really make kind of a run back towards the top of the ratings, slips a little. Naruto slipped a little. And then you have Gundam and My Hero Academia not really moving much. So it's as much as the front end of the block had good weeks, especially Fire Force going at 500s, which this day and age is actually a pretty impressive week to week climb. It really is just very front loaded, which is contrast to how it was at a point last year. We had a period where all the better shows were towards the end of the block, which I thought was pretty weird. So we had some nights where we had very poor front of the block numbers, like after Dragon Ball Super, and then magically we would get up to like a point two at like 2 in the morning. Some weird stuff like that. Very wonky numbers. But in general, based on the schedule, I can't point at something and say this needs to move here, this needs to move here. Because what you have, if you graph it out, is that after the initial 1300s drop from Dragon Ball Super to Genlock, which is not really ideal for Genlock, we've had shows, even shows that are still on the block that do better retention than Genlock. There's been worse retention than dropping 1300ths of a point. Then you have, like I said, here's like just the numbers in general from the start to the end of the block. 0.33, 0.2, 0.2, 0.17, 0.16, 0.15, 0.13, 2, 0.3, 0.3. Aside for one tiny bit towards the end where Gundam builds a tiny bit on Naruto, we just have a general gradual falling slope throughout the night, which is something that's actually pretty good for Toonami to have. That means that's a general sign that your shows are generally in the right order, or there's not some show towards the front that should be thrown to the back. So this is probably the most Pollyannish I felt about Konami's block in a bit of a time. Although I believe we don't have that. I believe we're towards the end of Dragon Ball Super. We're towards the end of My Hero Academia. So I generally believe Demon Slayer is Dragon Ball Super's replacement. Hell, knowing how well hyped Dragon Demon Slayer has been so far, many people calling it the anime of 2019. I would not be surprised if they get ballsy and just throw that to the top of the block. Just do a straight switch with Dragon Ball Super when that ends. That's going to be an interesting thing to note. And also, My Hero Academia, Considering where it is in the block, maybe they just cut the slot and give 330 back to Adult Swim. Maybe to get a cheap license. Let's see what happens there. So, what are you guys' opinions? Do you think these are great ratings? How would you do your schedule for Toonami? What do you think My Hero Academia's replacement is going to be if there is one? Leave your comments down below. If you like this, if you want more Toonami ratings content, please subscribe. Please hit the notification button. And of course, like this video. I am Super Orange Cat, and that is all.